Hello everybody, good morning. Welcome to MOG Sundays. Today we have with us Sangeeta Barooah Pisharoty, who is currently the National Affairs Editor of The Wire, and formerly she was a special correspondent at The Hindu. She has received critical acclaim for her debut book and her documentation of the Assam movement, Assam, the Accord and the Discord. Sangeeta began her career at the National News Agency, United News of India, and was the first woman from Northeast India to be employed at the agency's New Delhi headquarters. In today's session, Sangeeta will talk about the fifth taste of India from the kitchens of the Northeast. She's going to be talking about this popular flavor called Khaar. This earthy flavor made from the ash of banana peel and the bark when ensures that when dishes are cooked with it, it leaves behind a unique flavor that can't be boxed within the four flavor tastes that we often associate Indian food with. And that is what she's going to be talking to us about today. And she's brought a few samples as well. And we're also incredibly grateful to Hilton Goa Resort for supporting this event. I now welcome Sangeeta to take over.
Very good morning to everyone. And I know Sunday mornings are like sacrosanct, so thank you so much for giving that time to this talk. And I also am very, very grateful to the Museum of Goa for inviting me to give this talk. It's an absolute pleasure. And today, you know, as we talk, it's a very sad day in Assam. One of our popular musicians, Zubeen, passed away suddenly in Singapore 2 days ago, and his body came last night. So I don't think anyone in Assam slept last night. People just came out in the streets. I mean, it's crazy to see that kind of love for a musician in today's times. But that is what we are going through at the moment. So in the morning, because I knew Zubeen, I was just thinking, how prepared I am to talk about it today, you know. So then I thought of him. He would have just loved this because that's the reason he had gone to Singapore to attend the Northeast festival there. So a big promoter of this brand Northeast. So that's how. So my tribute to Zubeen before I start today. So anyway, the fifth taste. People ask me that why is it fifth taste when in Ayurveda we have 6 tastes. So I will, like people talk about the 4 tastes and then 2 other tastes in Ayurveda. I'll go into that. But why am I calling this as fifth taste is something that I will just build this case. You will get to know perhaps a bit more than where we are at the moment, and then I will try to finish it as soon as possible so that it can be a little interactive for people to ask me questions, because I'm sure for many here this is also something new. So no question is basic question, everything is an evolved one. Okay, thank you. So when I'm just talking about, when I was thinking actually about talking about fifth taste, I was asking myself, what is taste? What actually is taste? I was thinking about the tongue, you know, my tongue. And I was thinking that tongue is where you get this sense, you know, there's this taste receptors. You get this taste when you put a morsel of food, when you take a sip of something, you know, a drink, you just recognize a flavor. You just think that, oh, that's the taste. Because we normally, when we are sipping this, when we are eating something, we don't even think of, you know, what is taste. We're so used to these kind of tastes, it just got into our brain cells like that automatically. So we need to go back and think about what is taste. So obviously when this physiological sense, you know, this sense in us allows us to recognize the flavor of a dish: sweet, sour, salty and bitter. These are the 4 basic tastes. When you look at the world, you know, they tell you that 4 basic tastes exist. But now these 4 basic tastes that we typically compartmentalize the food that we eat worldwide, you know, something that we look at as like if any food that doesn't fall into these 4 basic compartments we sometimes tend to, many times I have seen, we tend to term this food as bland, as no taste, it's just nothing, no taste, tasteless, it has no flavor. I have actually heard also some people saying that it's like almost crude. It doesn't have that taste, that it doesn't fall into these 4 categories, means like it's not food at all, okay. So that's also something, I'll come to that hegemony of food a little later, but I'm just giving you a little idea. So it's important to remember here that also what I was talking about, if this falls into these 4 food categories, we also look at the food as very cultured, civilized, polished, that is where again this whole hegemony comes. Like food is like, if it's falls into these 4 categories, it's a cultured food, it's fine dining, it's all of that, okay. That's the traditional thing I'm talking about. And how this story is changing, I'll tell you a little later. This is the story of the flavor or the taste of food is so limited or so basic that we go down to this 4 basic sense of taste. But when I was thinking about the answer, it's not simple. It's anything but simple. So the story of the 5th taste, if we come to, when I was thinking about that, how it is not a simple story, then actually I also realized that it differs from when we are going into the realm of the 5th taste, it also differs from culture to culture. Okay, so that is where our story begins. When we were like, it's not located in a homogeneity, because the world has already recognized umami as the 5th taste, the Japanese umami as the 5th taste. I'll give more details about how Japanese umami became recognized as the world 5th taste. But here I am saying that the Indian 5th taste also exists, and we need to recognize that. So so our Khaar that we come from the Northeastern Indian kitchen is again not at all homogeneous. There is a homogeneous story, but there is also a difference. I'll come to that. So if you have to, first we need to understand a little bit about umami. What is umami? Because that story has been told. It's an established story, so it will help you to understand a little bit more about its taste. Well, if you ask people what is umami, the word itself means it's delicious, it's tastefulness, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure that takes over the entire tongue, the part of the tongue perhaps the taste buds. So it's the deliciousness of it. And then some people say it is like the meaty flavor in a broth. It's like savoriness. So basically savoriness is the 5th taste that means. Okay, so it also is activated. It activates the taste receptors. What activates our taste receptors? If it is umami, it is the glutamase, or a lot of people call it MSG also. Okay, there's a monosodium glutamate. It's an acid. So that acid actually is the flavor of umami. You find it in a lot of vegetables, you find it in like shellfish and all, you find it so many, in kimchi, you find miso, yeast extract, cheese has this, mushroom has that. So that is the flavor that you find, which is umami. There is a lot of literature also on what umami means and how it tastes, and and the development of this entire story since the 1990s. It has really picked up. So we have a lot of material on what umami is, unlike what Khaar is. So the basic difference here between umami and the Khaar is umami is acidic and our Khaar is alkaline. So when we think about an Indian thali, many times actually it's not just the sweet, sour, bitter and the 4 basic taste, salty. It's also about whether it's alkaline or acidic, because it comes to the host pH level. I'll talk about that. So whole Indian food is, I keep talking about Ayurveda because Ayurveda also gives you this whole thing about a wholesome, balanced food as 6 taste, which is one is of course the pungent, that is you see in Bengali cuisine and Assamese cuisine, a lot of Northeastern and other cuisine also you bring in that pungent element by having a fresh green chili. That's your pungent. And then you have the astringent, which is, I think in Marathi, Konkani and all, people talk about it, people call it his turat, I think. That's the astringent. We in Assamese call it keha. So we also have that keha flavor. Bengalis have that keha. So this is like the Ayurveda plate. Ayurveda plate already has 6 flavors, okay, like apart from this. But so we don't know which one is our Indian 5th taste, because when we talk about Ayurveda, we talk about all the 6 tastes. But when we have to contest for that space with the umami, I am bringing in Khaar here and talking about the basic difference is acidic and alkaline. And Khaar also is very interesting in the sense that it doesn't fall into the Ayurveda space. So it also takes us to a period which is perhaps far more ancient. The world recognized umami as a distinct taste in 1908. All thanks to one gentleman. He was a chemist and a professor at the University of Tokyo, Kikune Ikeda. He identified it actually as a unique form, which is very different from the 4 flavors. And this is all because of the glutamic acid in it. And so there's a story that goes, I don't know how much of it is true, but the company he went on to form talks about it, that one day he was having a miso soup and then he found it extremely tasty, a lot more tastier than what he had before. Then he said, what did you put in this? So he went on to research that and found that day perhaps the percentage of glutamic acid in the soup was actually quite, like reached a perfection. Okay, because there is a saying in Japan and all, if you add less salt to your like any miso broth or any other like shellfish, if you are adding a bit of ajinomoto, which became, he called it ajinomoto later, and so it is actually better. Okay, so that you actually don't use salt, then you actually get get the umami. Okay. So he named it, Ikeda named his flavor ajinomoto. Ajinomoto in Japanese means essence of flavor. Now all of us have got somewhere one little packet of ajinomoto, I think, in our houses today. Okay, so that's how the story moved. Okay, now where I was thinking the other day, when I was in Delhi for the first time in early 1990s, there were certain vegetables we never found, and for instance, say broccoli, leeks, and now when I look at it, avocado is being sold by the Uncle G neighborhood, is selling actually kiwi fruit and all that. How things come to us like that, it's also another story. So ajinomoto has now entered our the kitchen space all over the world, and today it's like, next to salt and pepper, I think it is the most popular and most popular flavor enhancer across the globe. So Ikeda by 1990 actually did mass production of ajinomoto. He made ajinomoto from soybeans, from wheat, and then he patented the process. So ajinomoto is now, that's why they recognize 5th taste from Japan. Now the story of Khaar is not as linear or not as a rising graph story. Okay, because many times I've seen, I don't know how much of you know the history of Northeast. We were all very, we thought that we were great, we had great kings and great kingdoms, and like even now when I look back, the Ahom dynasty in Assam, it ruled us for 610 years. When I look at the present map of India, I just think, which dynasty ruled us for 610 years? None. Not even British, not Mughals, but we were ruled once, but we don't get to read about it in our books, in our history books. We have always read about the Mughals. Mughals never ruled us. So that part of the world, like Myanmaris ruled us, the Burmese ruled us. And when I talk about that, when this whole Burmese thing was happening in Delhi newsrooms, I was saying, oh, Burmese ruled us. When did they rule you? I said, when that came, the entire region, came to the British hands from the Myanmaris in 1826. Next year we'll have 200 years of Yandabu Pact, and that pact not only took the entire Northeast but also the Rakhine of Myanmar. How the Rohingya story started from the Yandabu Pact. You know, we don't connect those things because this man-made borders came up, and we became such so caught in this straitjacket that but history is not like that. It's like water; it percolates. Okay, so. Story of Khaar is also not like that, because we found ourselves to be at the periphery. So everybody is like, we became the market for so many of the commercial products. They started coming from here and there. So we also, during the British era, many of our food and all were also looked at as like crude, because it doesn't fall into that four space, that four basic taste space. It doesn't fall into that. So many of them, not just our food, our jewelry, people started discarding our jewelry, started wearing Bengali jewelry. Even today, in my wedding, I was also given a Bengali jewelry set. That became a part of, the culture. It's actually the colonization. Okay, so that's the story. So it seeps into many spaces. It's all Khaar's story is also not very different. So Khaar began to be eaten by people at home, but it had no currency. It's not the fine food. That's my daughter when she was chotu. At word Meghla Chadar. Why I say this is Khaar is actually not just our food. It's also the Assamese identity. We call ourselves Khaar Khua or Homia, which means we are the alkaline eating Assamese. The very identity is that. It's a very interesting thing actually when you look at this identity thing, like linked to one's food. I mean, we look at this Assamese, across the Northeast, identity is also what you wear. It's not just the weave you wear, it's also the bag you carry, the jewelry you eat, that you wear, So these are like everything. You don't have to give your name. Like a Sadaji moving around in the market, is a Sadaji. Okay. So because we also have this, like mostly it's the women, when they move around, people know which community she belongs to, So you don't have to ask her name or where you come from. So that is the whole thing, and food is also like that. So our Khaar identity, Assamese identity is completely linked to Khaar. If people don't eat Khaar and call themselves Assamese, it's like the Bengalis questioned if you don't have fish. What kind of a Bengali are you? But the interesting thing is also it's linked to partition, to British rule. Like in the lower Assam side, people don't eat Khaar much. Okay, it's a big thing across the upper Assam where the tribes are mostly. And because I remember this famous Bollywood actor, Hollywood also, I think from Assam, Adil Hussain. Adil once told me, he said, I never grew up having Khaar because he was from the lower Assam side. Okay, so he never had Khaar. But Khaar is such an important part on the other side. What is Khaar? Where do we make Khaar from? Khaar is actually made from a banana. So it's made from that banana, which is we call it bhim kol, okay, or athia kol. Kol means banana in Assamese. So bhim or athia kol, this is an amazing variety. It's locally, you will find it only in, say, beyond Assam. You'll find it in rest of East and South Asia, Thailand and all that. They also have this variety. It's a fat, podgy banana, and it has this big seeds. They're like, if you cut a slice of that banana, you'll find 5 dots there, black dots. These are the big fat seeds, okay? So, and it grows wild. And anything that grows wild in Assam and the rest of Northeast is like cheap. It's the cheapest banana that you find in the Northeast, okay? Because it grows wild. My mother always says, kati de aku hobo. It's like you chop it off, it'll grow on its own. It has that power, so it has that, okay. So it's like and I tell you, I have never seen anywhere else the kind of variety of bananas that you get to see in Assam or the rest of the Northeast, okay. Because Assam, by the way, has the Asia's largest banana market in a place which is on the below the Garo Hills, which is called, we Assamese call the place Dorong Giri. and the Garo tribes call it Dorongri. So everything is there grey, they say. Grey means place, okay, so Dorongri, they say. So even today, the Garos come down from the hills, and we also grow commercially, and every day large number of vehicles go out with different varieties of banana. We have all kinds of bananas and all kinds of name, okay, and certain bananas are linked to certain food, and let's say there's one dessert that we make during Saraswati Puja and the Satyanarayan Puja, yeah, we call it ghul, and it's made of, I think, a certain kind of banana, malbhuk, I think. Yeah, so it's that. And no, if you don't find it, then you cannot make it. Okay, it's like a mashed kind of a fabulous, it's like amazing. I go to the puja only to have that dessert, which is served as a prasad. So it's like that. So, and then our, this banana is also used as, it's so nutritious. It is used as a baby food. Pregnant women are given the food, and everyone says that, you know, if I'm feeling a little weak, they'll say, oh, have one vimkol. You know, the villages, it's that, you know, you have one vimkol, you'll be all right. So I just want to quickly tell you also what all it has. It's of course a tropical and subtropical climate only it grows, and it needs humid, you know, alluvial soil, and it has potassium, it has calcium like any other bananas. It has iron, vitamin C, very high fiber content, okay, and people say that it's good for gut health. Everyone says that if you can have 2 bananas, you cannot fall sick, 2 bhimkol, gathia kol. Okay, so and now, so this call is something, this banana is extremely important that you need to make the khar, and it grows wild, as I said. So how do you make the khar? You take the, when it becomes ripe, we have the banana, and then we don't throw away the peel. We just dry it, sun dry it. Okay, and it's sun dry it to an extent that it becomes like, it develops that cracking sound when you just press it, it breaks with a crack, you know. So that's when it becomes like really ready. So then what happens is like we burn it. Okay, we burn it, and then we burn it, and we keep it for it to become slightly cooler. And then we add, everything is andazan, you know, approximate. If you ask people, if I have 10, you know, banana peel, how much water should I put into the burnt ash of the banana peel? I said, andazan. Everything is andazan, okay. So because there is no documentation as such if this happened. When you go and turn a food into a fine dining thing, it's only the chefs with their tall hats will come and talk about, you need to put this ounce, that is, you know, it hasn't reached that. It is just andazan, okay. So andazan is what you think of when you look at the ash that has come off it, and you pour water. Some people again keep it for about 30 minutes to an hour. In my house, it's kept overnight. My mother comes from a village, so she always thinks that no, overnight. So overnight has always been followed. So you put the thing and put a lid on it, and then you wait overnight. Next morning, you will see the ash has gone down obviously, and there is a white liquid that comes up. So we extract that and we use it. We just save it for to put it in our dishes. But some people, like you see the 2 colors, okay. One is that I'll get that in my home, you know, the first color, okay. But the second color is extremely dark, okay. So that also is Kola-khar. We call it Kola-khar. Kol means banana. So that also is khar, and tastes the same. It's amazing. I'm just carrying this here. See the color? It's like for only say half an hour people have put it, okay. So it tastes the same. And the interesting thing is, I want to talk about a little bit about the a story of salt. Not everybody had got the, salt in those days. We take salt as like granted today. Think of Dundee March, salt was never so easily available. And even in the Northeast, salt was not easily available. It's only the Europeans who would go and sell it, So, Khaar was, as actually this whole water-like smoky taste of Khaar was a kind of was used as a salt. So people used this as a taste, okay? And now is another thing that we add salt to our Khaar dishes. That's the takeover, okay? So that has happened. So this taste like both the water, both the extractions taste like water. So it makes us think that water is also a taste. When I drink water, do I think of it as bland? Do I think of it as like, no taste, nothing? I just need it. I just take it. It's tasty. I want clear drinking water. Okay. So we never think of water when we are drinking water as taste. So, but when the story comes of Khaar now today, when I look back, and like Khaar tastes like water. I can drink. You can taste it. It's here. You can just take a taste of a lick of it and say this is like water. Okay. But people ask about it as like, why is this bland? Because it's like it's not perhaps a naturally developed kind of a liquid. Yeah, so I explained this whole method of how, see, look at this, how we dry it and it has to develop that cracking sound, okay? So the peel is, and many people, we use this, like in my house, we use this like the ripe banana, peel, we dry and make it. But in several other households, including a lot of other tribes, like they say the Kharsis and all of that, what they do is they don't use the peel, the banana, the peel. They use actually the stem. Okay, stem also is used. They use the softer part of the stem of the banana plant, and then they make thin strips of it, sun dry it, and then they burn it like the strips you can see. They're burning it, and then after that you sieve it. Okay, it becomes the. Many people also keep it as in a dry liquid form, like I have it here. You can touch and see later. Okay, so it looks like ash. Okay, then you can actually store it as ash, and when you need it, you pour water andazan overnight, and then you get your Khaar. It's the liquid is ready to prepare the food in the morning. Okay, like see this lady. She's making these bars, these little strips, okay, to burn it. This is how you make it with the banana stem. And some households are also very rare, very few. They also make this Khaar from the raw papaya peel also. Okay, so this bit is, remember that, because this bit is also very, very important. It's not that somebody just experimented with it. I'll later, as I go, you will be able to see why. Okay, so anybody wants to take a lick of it, can take it, okay? Just taste it for yourself. And I would have really liked to actually cook some Khaar here and dishes, but maybe next time. We are also, I am actually working on this, how to take this forward and create a case for us to go for patenting and all of that. So we are also, I'm just right now, funding is a big issue. So I am looking for that to get photographs there and document the process, the communities who just use this and where are day to day and that kind of thing. And it's also used in a lot of our ritual food and all that. So I'm just looking at that. So maybe someday I'll bring that whole thing, Shraddha, to Museum of Goa and with food. Okay. Yeah, so now let's go back to the whole umami and the Khaar story. And what actually makes the primary difference, as I said, between umami and Khaar is the pH level. Okay, it's actually acidic and alkaline is the pH level. Okay, because if it is below 7, that's, you can just look at it as like lemon juice, vinegar, it's that part. But Khaar is like above pH level is above 7. So it tastes like, as I said, water, baking soda, even the detergents, you know, like I remember J.V. Taverner, I think, he had mentioned during when he had traveled in the 17th century, he through the Brahmaputra Valley, he had talked about this khar not as something that they eat, but this is actually used as to as a kind of to as a leech, you know, to make the silk white. Talked about that. So it's this whole maybe because he never tasted Assamese food at the time, language and all the things was there. So he must have seen what people done, you know, and talked about that. And the other thing is like, unlike the acidic umami, when we add the khar into a dish, immediately you see the reaction. It becomes a kind of a red. Everything becomes red. Then you know that it's not just water. It's like it's got into this whole, the color of the dish changes immediately. Okay, so but then the color of the curry later changes. Okay, so the pH level, because it is higher in alkaline food, it is considered to be good for your gut, it's good for your health. So Assamese dishes in other tribes and other boroughs and all, also they eat khar first. Okay, khar is never eaten last. Only masur jhool, the tenga, is the sar is eaten at the end. Okay, and then you can have your sweet. So it's also then of course it just falls into the whole Ayurveda system also. You know, it's just a crazy coming together of different streams of, you know, practices and thoughts, I think. But we eat khar only as like khar has to be eaten first. Okay, so that sets the whole thing for your gut. Okay, so it looks after your gut. And umami is like, you know, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this before, that if you add just to reach that perfect level of umami is very important. Otherwise it goes, it's like leans more towards the sour. But khar can turn bitter. Okay, so you have to be very, that's why the water content is very important, you know, and everything is andaj until that. So it can turn to bitter too, you know. And then here, that's our ripe Atia call. Okay, so you can see this lady, she's very popular YouTuber. So she is describing how to make that khar from the stem. So she's cut those stems and is actually sun drying it. Okay, and though Assamese have their whole identity linked to khar, but all other various other communities that reside in the Northeast have khar in their kitchen. Okay, and they call it by different names, like the Boros call it Kharwi, Rabha, the Plains tribe, call it Kharsi, Karbis call it Kangmoi, Dimasas call it Khari, Khasis call it Kalchi, Missing tribe also call it Kola-khar, then Garus call it Karachi, and so many names are there. Okay, and they all eat it in, that's theirs. Okay, so you can just see that whole span of that region have got their own khar, the fifth taste. So now when we look at the story, history of it, like, you know, I was looking at this, I said, what is the history? How ancient it is, okay, the practice. It's very difficult to say, except the fact that it's a common food shared by most of the tribes and the non-tribes who reside by the Brahmaputra Valley. And, but the exact age is very difficult to find. And, but I have found it while I was looking at the other tribes, their practices. Say in Andhra, Telangana, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh and all, there is a particular tribe, it's called Chengchu tribe. So Chengchu's lot has changed in their life. But even today, they eat the raw tamarind by burning the tamarind leaves and turn them into ash, and roll the raw tamarind pieces and eat it. Okay, so that is like they give a coating of the ash and have it. That made me think, like, that means many of us were ash eaters. It's like so that means this whole practice of eating ash is something that it must have been very, very primitive. Okay, so they also burn another leaves of another, the Chengchus do another I forgot. It's called Siruman tree, they call it. I don't know what it is called in, it doesn't have an English name, but they also burn the leaves of that tree and add it to various vegetables and this thing and roll it and have it. Okay, so basically they're ash eaters. So when I was looking at that, how ash was part of whether how far can we go, then I saw in various South Asian communities have this practice of eating ash, and we are like a gateway to that part of the world, you see. And then also in South America, in Venezuela and all of these places, people eat ash. Okay, and interestingly, now that ash is now a couple of these fine dining spaces are also trying to bring ash back to the table. For example, there is I don't know if some of you have gone to Copenhagen, you might have come across a Michelin star restaurant called Noma. So Noma uses ash now in their food. Okay, there is another Michelin star restaurant called Mugaris in Spain. I've not been to Spain, so I can't say. They also use ash, and interestingly, the Noma uses hay ash in their food, ash made of hay. And Spain uses ash made from leeks and horse radish. So when I was talking about papaya peel and how they make ash out of that, it's actually, that means it links us to that story. See, it's the vegetables, the peels were not thrown away, and they were like using this as ash to food, for nutrition. Okay, and also there are a lot of communities that eat banana peel. They make a chutney, I think in South India somewhere, I think Kerala and all, they make. Andhra they make, and the Manipuris also have a dish. You know, they make that bora, I think, the pakoda. They don't throw away the banana peel. So that is there, and ash is also used, I discovered, to preserve cheese. Ash is rolled over the cheese. These dollops of cheese, and basically to take away the moisture and also to keep the acid away. Okay, so ash has been a part of our food and our preservative and all of that, and I'm giving you two examples how they are bringing ash back to as a fine dining food. Okay, we have a lot of hope now. Okay, I told you about this, the French traveler. He talked about this as a, bleach that they were using as a mixture of ashes because Assam also has silk, you see, we have mulberry silk and all that, we got GI now, okay, and Assamese bride wears white silk, okay, like I think the Malayalis. So, the story. Yes, what dishes we make from the Kola-khar. Okay, Kola-khar, we have vegetarian, non-vegetarian dishes, all kinds of like fish, pork, chicken, mutton, everything is made with Kola-khar. And also we have vegetarian, very popular, made from raw papaya, made from the banana stem. Okay, we chop it fine, very, very fine, the banana stem, and we use this Kola-khar with it. Absolutely, bamboo shoots, yeah, amazing, long gourd, greens, various greens, and the black chickpeas, like black chickpeas and the green gram is actually used as a prasad in our Vaishnava, the Namghars, also in the temples now, so that when you bring home, loads of it, what do? You make Khaar of it. Okay, so that's also a very popular vegetarian one. But non-vegetarian ones are like a lot of it. I particularly have mentioned one that the Rabhas make. During the monsoons, they go hunting for snails in the rice fields. So they get this snail and then they make a snail curry with Khaar. It's very, very popular, and not everywhere. It's like it's a delicacy. If they are making that for you, that means you are really a prize guest. Otherwise, they will not. Okay. Then they make a dry fish preparation also with Khaar. It's amazing. It's like a dry fish, and the Khaar, the ash gets stick to it. It's amazing. Okay, now I can't go without talking about Eno, because it is also, Miss Eno is very important, because in many of the places, people just, because it's alkaline. So you don't want to, now many households don't want to go through that whole process. So they use this, a bit of Eno, which is alkaline, and make your Khaar. Okay, a quick one. Like a couple of us have done it actually in Delhi also, So I am also guilty of using Miss Eno. So I had to use this. But this is what, we have come down to this whole level of using any alkaline, okay? Because not everybody can make Khaar, and you go first looking for that particular kind of banana and things like that. But thankfully, we do we're seeing this a very chota Khaar industry now picking up in Assam. And like you will see this is Kola-khar they're selling. This is a shop in Guwahati called, what is it? I forgot. No, I forgot. Yeah. Thalaguri is selling now, okay? So that this, and then there is a project that Thalaguri. Government is also now using this, the dry ash. So you can bring it home, and they're selling it in Amazon, Flipkart, and all these 1mg and all of that, okay? So I order when I'm in Delhi and I need it, I order. And then you can keep it, so overnight you just add the water, andazan, and then you make your Khaar the next day, okay? So, okay, now let's come to the color. The color story of Khaar is very important, because the color of Khaar is like grey or black, or when you look at it like that, when you look at the bottle as a black bottle, would you be interested in buying it? Why not? You have to ask yourself. Because our food is normally looked at as like colorful food. Look, this is the colors on our dishes. If it is like a dosa or anything, your biryani, think of it, the yellow, the red, the green and all that. That's Indian food. You talk about Indian food as that. It's colors. It's not just on our clothes that we wear colorful clothes, but we also, it's reflected in our thalis. Okay, so that is, I feel, as the first hurdle to actually making Khaar popular, because that's where the problem begins, because that's where the food hegemony kicks in. Okay, it's the hegemony of food kicks in, because I'll tell you why hegemony of food kicks in, because we normally don't look at Indian food having the color black. We don't. Black has a lot of this thing. If koi black kutta ghar mein janam ho gaya, you just throw it away. A black cat, nobody wants to see. Black is not the auspicious color. So black has a big problem. But in Assam or in the rest of the Northeast, we don't look at color of the food. We just go for the taste. So we have this paste that you get to see is the black sesame paste. We use, it's an absolute, it's like a killer. You just have to taste a dish made of this paste, and it's a very important thing also, because it's the sesame and black sesame. So we didn't have much of oil. So this also is used as a kind of an oil base. Okay, when you first use it as the paste, it gives it that the consistency and the bland, binds everything together. So many of the tribes even in the Northeast even today don't use oil. They use this paste, black paste. So obviously when you are making something of that black paste, what do you get? You get a black dish. Okay, so I am particularly putting the photograph of this celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay when he came in 2011 to Assam, particularly to include this color black in the Indian food atlas, in the food map. We actually do need a broad-based food atlas. We are so narrow in our outlook. But it's developing now, and I'm hoping in some years this will change. So he also made this fabulous two dishes. One is that til diya murgir mangho, which is the black chicken curry, using sesame seeds, and he made a mutton curry again with the same base. And you can just go onto YouTube and see how crazy he went, He said, I've never tasted this kind of a taste, and it's amazing. I remember I worked for The Wire, so we had this thing about, everybody will get their own food someday. So I am the naughty one, so I said, okay, black. So I made a chicken curry with the same dish, and because I have a story to tell people about Gordon Ramsay. Are you better than Gordon Ramsay? No. So I just took that, and people were so apprehensive. They came, what has Sangeeta made? So they came, look, and they were a little apprehensive, stepping back. Okay, I was looking at that, and I said, no, you just take half a spoon of it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. Okay, throw it away. It's not disrespect. You don't like food, you don't eat it. Try it. When they tried, that was the dish that got over first. Because people said, oh God, it's like the same chicken. It's the same chicken. What they're talking about, the flavor, the taste. They went beyond color. Okay? Here, in the Northeast, we also have a common lentil. It's called matima. So if you go to any of the Northeastern villages and all said, "Arey dal bhat de do." Dal bhat is like, will come with this matima. It's a black dal. It all come as black, There's no yellow there, okay? So, and it's grown all over the place, and it's one of the most healthiest lentils. You will find in Uttarakhand too, Uttarakhand people say, wo kali dal leke aana. Because now people have now realized that kali dal ka kya matlab hai. The strength that it has and the taste. We also have, of course, the dal makhani, but somewhere we add a bit of white to, I think, make it kosher, I think. Yeah, so something of that sort. And I also want to mention, there's one dish, which I tasted in Hong Kong some years ago, and I was traveling. Those days I used to write on food, and I had traveled with a lot of these Indian food writers. They said, no, I don't know, their whole story was like, which was not my story. So I kept watching them, and I was more and more leaning towards the Hong Kong walas. So then they said, because I told them I eat pigeon meat, we eat dog meat, we eat rabbits, this, that. Where will they fit in the Indian story mein ye food ka kahani? So it was a big thing. That's why I keep talking about we do need a different, more broad-based food atlas now. It's time. Okay, so I mentioned this dish particular because I tasted that. It's called century egg or 100-year-old egg or something. You will find it in the Chinese cuisine. So it's also locally called pidan, and when they serve it to you, they call, you ask, what is this? This is egg. So then there is no red, there is no yellow or white there. It comes as the, almost like a red thing, a brown, black, red exterior, and the top of it is like a grey jelly-like thing. Okay. So he said, nahi khana. But you had to do what I did with my colleagues in the Wire, just tell them, thoda khao. Then you realize it's nothing but the egg. So how did they achieve this? They achieved it through a process which is like they boil these, they actually don't boil, sorry. They don't boil the eggs, they just put it under the ground for some time. Like we do with our gelatamul, with our lot of our food. We do that, we put it underground for some time, and that's the delicacy, it comes out. So that's the Chinese delicacy. So then when I tasted, and I said, wow, ye to anda hai. So then everyone said, anda hai, everybody, and it got over. So we have to cross that barrier of color. Indian food has to go beyond color if you have to go looking for the story of the fifth taste or any taste. Okay, and if you have to be a little bit more inclusive. Well, so it teaches us that there is, as I said, so much grey, okay, to every story, including our food's history or what we called India today. So, nothing is so black and white as they say, tomato or pyaz ka tarka. We have to go beyond that. I love tomato and pyaz ka tarka, but I want them to love us also. So that is hard. Okay, because everything is pyaz ka tarka. I remember the great sociologist Dipankar, Bhattacharjee once told me, he said I had interviewed him, I think, for the Hindu. And this was a format where you do, it's called Table for Two, where you have to talk about this thing. I think Prashant Panjar was also featured there. So, we have to talk about the person's work over food. So I had to ask questions to them, and he, being the true blue Bengali, never liked the tomato ka tarka. So he had to really come after it. And he said, oh, if I put my boots also into it, it'll taste the same, So that's not my words, but he said that, okay? So it's like that. Or maybe someday some people may talk about that as for Khaar too, okay? So, yeah. So the end, why I placed it vis-a-vis the Umami, not getting into the Ayurveda space, is also something to do with nature. When we talk about the Bhimkol today, Bhimkol is one of the most affected banana varieties with the climate change. Because we are getting incessant rain, particularly this year, the amount of rain that Northeast that got is it's not a joke, So, and then worse, one part of it is also facing drought. Can you imagine a region which is to get two monsoonal, like 2 seasons of rain, are now facing drought. So we are facing this problem of climate change, and Athia or the Bhimkol is one of the biggest victims of it. So then if we are talking about that, we have to then, because it comes like, as my mother said, hoi jabo ako, it like grows on it in the wild as it is, it will come back, it will never come back. So if it doesn't come back, then we have to talk about nature and its link. So that's why I say the story of Khaar is really the story of how our senses, our tongue perceives food in relation to its natural source. Where are the natural sources we look for food, the taste and all of that? Like people go and look for vegetables days. It's like that. And how traditionally early humans prepared food for a deeper and a more harmonious bond with their immediate environment, with their immediate surroundings. And so therefore the 5th taste from India's Northeast, it stands actually at a perfect harmony between man and nature, which many of you may call it as slow living. Thank you.